Hollywood sells us heroes every single day. But what if the real heroes were already among them, hiding in plain sight? These men didn't need a script to be brave. They didn't need a director to tell them to charge. They left their fame, their fortune, and their comfort, and walked straight into the most brutal war in human history. Some came back broken, some almost didn't come back at all. Today, Forgotten Celebrities uncovers the 10 Hollywood legends who traded the spotlight for the battlefield. And trust me, their real story is more gripping than anything they ever filmed. Number 1, James Doohan. Before he became Scotty on Star Trek, James Doohan was an ordinary Canadian kid who signed up to fight in the most dangerous war the world had ever seen. On June 6, 1944, D-Day, he stormed the beaches of Normandy alongside thousands of other soldiers. What happened next was something he never forgot. He was shot 7 times in a single day. Once through the chest, 4 times in the leg, once through the hand. And that last shot took his middle finger clean off. For decades, he hid this injury on camera, carefully angling his hand away from the lens during Star Trek filming. Millions of fans watched him every week and never knew. The man who beamed people across the galaxy had already survived the most horrific beach in human history. Number 2, Charles Durning. Charles Durning was barely a teenager, just a boy really, when he found himself on the beaches of Normandy on D-Day. What followed was so traumatic that he refused to speak about it publicly for nearly 50 years. He survived a massacre where almost every single man around him was killed. He fought in hand-to-hand combat and was stabbed multiple times with a bayonet. He was captured by the Germans, managed to escape, was recaptured, and somehow survived again. He went on to survive the Battle of the Bulge, one of the bloodiest battles of the entire war. He received 3 Purple Hearts and a Silver Star for his bravery. When Hollywood journalists would ask him about his war experience, he would go quiet and simply say, "I don't want to remember." And you can understand why. Number 3, David Niven. David Niven was already a rising Hollywood star with a promising career ahead of him when World War II broke out. Most people in his position would have stayed in America and waited it out. Not Niven. He immediately packed his bags, left Hollywood behind, returned to Britain, and voluntarily enlisted in the British Army, becoming one of the very few actors to completely abandon a successful career for war. He rose to the rank of lieutenant colonel and served in the elite Phantom Reconnaissance Regiment, a top-secret unit that operated directly behind enemy lines gathering intelligence. He was personally involved in operations surrounding the D-Day landings. After the war ended, his old friend Cary Grant asked him, "David, what did you do for 6 years?" Niven smiled and simply said, "I just got lucky." Number 4, Lee Marvin. That was the kind of man he was. Lee Marvin served as a United States Marine in the brutal Pacific Campaign, not at Normandy directly, but what he experienced was every bit as horrifying. His unit suffered absolutely devastating casualties in some of the most violent island battles of the entire war. During the Battle of Saipan, he was shot through the sciatic nerve, a wound so severe that it left him hospitalized and in recovery for over 13 months. When he finally returned to civilian life, he was a completely changed man. He turned to acting, and every single tough guy role he ever played, every cold stare, every moment of controlled violence on screen, he said it all came from one place. The men he watched die right beside him in the Pacific. His intensity wasn't performance, it was memory. Number 5, Charles Bronson. Raw, unprocessed, never forgotten memory. Charles Bronson had one of the most remarkable journeys of anyone on this list. He grew up in crushing poverty, so poor that he once had to share clothes with his own sisters just to have something to wear to school. When World War II came, he enlisted in the United States Air Force and became a tail gunner on a B-29 bomber, one of the most dangerous jobs in the entire war. Tail gunners had some of the highest casualty rates of any position. He flew multiple dangerous combat missions and was awarded the Purple Heart for wounds received in battle. When you watch Charles Bronson on screen, that stone-cold expression, those steel eyes, that absolute stillness, that wasn't acting training. That was a man who had flown through anti-aircraft fire and come out the other side. Hollywood didn't make Charles Bronson tough. War did. Number 6, Henry Fonda. Henry Fonda was 37 years old, not a young man, with a wife and children at home when Pearl Harbor was attacked and America entered the war. Nobody would have blamed him for staying home. He was famous, he was older, he had a family to protect. Instead, he walked quietly into a recruitment office and enlisted in the United States Navy. And he specifically refused to use his Hollywood fame to get a safe, comfortable desk job far from danger. He served as an intelligence officer in the Pacific Theater and earned a Bronze Star for his service. He later said, and this is remarkable, that enlisting in the Navy was the single most important thing he had ever done in his entire life. More important than any movie, more important than any award. His own son, Peter Fonda, only fully learned his father's war story years after his death. Number 7, Clark Gable. Clark Gable was the king of Hollywood, the biggest male star on the planet, when tragedy struck his personal life. His beloved wife, actress Carole Lombard, died in a plane crash while returning from a war bonds tour. Gable was absolutely devastated. Friends who knew him said he genuinely did not care whether he lived or died after her death. And so, he enlisted. He flew 5 actual combat missions over Nazi-occupied Europe as a gunner on a B-17 bomber, sitting in one of the most exposed and dangerous positions on the aircraft, with enemy fighters and anti-aircraft guns trying to kill him at every turn. Planes were being shot down all around him on these missions. And here is the most astonishing part. Adolf Hitler himself was reportedly so obsessed with capturing Clark Gable alive that he personally offered a significant cash reward to any German pilot who could bring him in. The King of Hollywood had a bounty on his head, placed there by Hitler himself. Number 8, Eddie Albert. Eddie Albert is probably the least famous name on this list, and yet he may be the single greatest hero here. During the Battle of Tarawa in the Pacific, one of the bloodiest and most chaotic battles of the entire war, Eddie Albert did something that most people would consider impossible. Under direct, sustained enemy fire, with bullets hitting the water all around him, he personally piloted a small wooden boat back and forth between the beach and the ships offshore, and rescued 47 wounded Marines who would have otherwise been left to die on that beach. 47 men, multiple trips, under live fire, every single time. He was awarded the Bronze Star with the Combat 5 device, meaning Valor Under Fire. The man most Americans remember as the goofy farmer from the TV comedy Green Acres was, in real life, one of the most genuinely heroic men of his entire generation. Number 9, Ernest Borgnine. Ernest Borgnine didn't just serve in World War II. He dedicated a full decade of his life to the United States Navy, enlisting before the war and staying in uniform long after many others had gone home. He served as a gunner's mate and saw significant action throughout the war years, experiencing combat that shaped everything about him as a man. When he finally left the Navy and returned to civilian life, he had absolutely no idea what to do with himself. He was lost. It was only when a friend suggested he try acting that his life found its new direction. He went on to win the Academy Award for Best Actor. But in every single interview for the rest of his life, he credited the Navy, not Hollywood, for making him the man he became. The discipline, the toughness, the work ethic, the ability to show up every single day no matter what. Hollywood gave Ernest Borgnine an Oscar. The Navy gave him everything else. And finally, number 10, Mel Brooks. We come to perhaps the most surprising name on this entire list, Mel Brooks. Yes, that Mel Brooks. The man behind Blazing Saddles, Young Frankenstein, Spaceballs, one of the greatest comedy minds who ever lived, served as a combat engineer in the United States Army during World War II. His job, defusing German landmines near active front lines. One wrong move and he was gone. After the war, people asked him why he dedicated so much of his comedy career to mocking Hitler, why the producers, why so many Nazi jokes. And Mel Brooks gave one of the most powerful answers in Hollywood history. He said, "You can't get back at Hitler with a gun anymore, but you can humiliate him. You can make people laugh at him. You can take away his power with ridicule." For Mel Brooks, comedy wasn't just entertainment. It was his personal act of revenge against the darkest evil he had ever witnessed. 10 men, 10 legends. 10 stories that Hollywood never put on the big screen, but absolutely should have. These men didn't just play heroes, they were heroes. Long before the cameras rolled, long before the fame, long before anyone knew their names, they showed up and they fought. If this video gave you something new today, something that made you see these legends differently, hit that subscribe button right now, because at Forgotten Celebrities, this is exactly what we do. We find the stories history forgot. Share this with someone who thinks they know everything about World War II. Until next time, stay curious.